1741, an expedition led by Vitus Bering sailed from Kamchatka to explore whether the contiguous continent is Asian or North American. They did not have direct contact with the Alaskan Native Americans at that trip, but they returned to Kamchatka with valuable sea mammal pelts. Since the sea otter pelts were extremely valuable in China, the Russian adventurers decided to reach the mainland of Alaska. In 1785, the fur traders' competition between the European and American began, especially along the northwest coast of Alaska. In 1799, the Russian-American Company was granted a monopoly over the North Pacific trade, and they built a permanent base on Kodiak Island. There was a major fort and trading post built at Sitka, destroyed by the native North Americans. 5 years later, the post was rebuilt with more defense. The Christianization of native North Americans was very unsuccessful because the people had their own religious system. In 1834, the first smallpox was spread among the Sitka area. Native Americans found that their shamans could not cure the disease, and half the people in that area died. Eventually, they turned to the Russians for vaccinations. In 1867, the United States bought Alaska from Russia, but the U.S. civil government did not exist in Alaska for 10 years. In 1880, gold was found near the present city of Huanu. 4 years later, the civil government appeared and the white population increased in Alaska. In 1912, Native North American leaders founded the Alaska Native Brotherhood. In 1923, Alaska Native Sisterhood was created. The membership of those organizations was restricted to English speakers, and the constitutions were also printed in English. Their goal was to have equal rights to the whites. The Haida held religious beliefs that centralized around supernatural figures. The creation of their world stemmed from one supreme being, Ni-Kil-Las. This being is able to take many forms, but often chooses to take the form of Raven. Raven is responsible for much of the Haida's success, but also for many of their hardships. He is a trickster and is often considered a representation of people themselves. He is the hero of Haida mythology because he created the first humans from a clamshell. The origin of mankind started when Ni-Kil-Las, in the form of Raven, had sexual intercourse with the clam. The clam gave birth to 6 people. The 6 people were initially covered in hair, but as each generation evolved to become more attractive, their amount of hair diminished. The Haida people started to use grass, skins, and rocks to cover and warm themselves. Finally, Raven took pity on them and gave them fire to keep themselves warm. He saved their lives. Therefore, Raven was responsible for their creation and light and order. However, he was therefore also responsible for darkness and death, as those must exist for light in order to exist. To the Haida, the world is one seamless existence. Supernatural beings can transform into salmon people, forest people, bear people, or any other form they desire. In the space of a ritual, natural and supernatural beings are able to come closer than any other time. This connection and relationship in ritualistic ceremonies is highlighted in artwork through the illustration on masks, pottery, faces, and bodies. During events like potlatches, the Haida pray and give offerings to masters of game animals and those who have wealth. These ceremonies, once outlawed after the arrival of Europeans, were formal events held to commemorate a variety of occasions: death, birth, naming, and many others. In potlatches, the Haida gave their belongings to each other in the spirit of their community's strongest value, generosity. Potlatches reminded the Haida of their ancient roots and the importance of strong relationships among their people and gods. They're considered opportunities to reinforce and express their own communal values. Artists within the community are groomed their entire lives to develop masterpieces for these ceremonies. They are commissioned for potlatches and develop beautiful, specific artwork featuring animal and supernatural illustrations for the event itself. They are incredibly sacred as they represent the connection that occurs during the ceremony between the Haida and the supernatural beings. Animals that roam the earth are considered to be a higher form of life than humans, as they are considered to be far more intelligent. They're worshipped and praised for their wisdom and the source of food that they provide for the Haida people. Animals are more connected to the supernatural world. The Haida strongly believe in reincarnation. In some cases in which Haida people know they are close to death, they will even tell the community which parents they will be reborn to. Haida art, like most Northwest Coast Native art, follows the principle of form-line design. This is a style incorporating characteristic shapes called ovoids in U forms and S forms in two-dimensional designs. Their work typically includes natural forms of animals, such as orcas, bears, eagles, humans, and legendary mythological creatures like thunderbirds. These figures are often depicted squatting with bent arms and legs. Bilateral symmetry is very important to the designs, and almost no space is left unadorned. The Haida were well known for their craftsmanship and artistry. The most common media historically was Western red cedar carved into sculptures, figures, totem poles, masks, canoes, panels, and jewelry. Northwest Coast natives also used stone and copper for carvings and adornments. Woven cedar bark and wool were used in textiles, including form-line designs, called chilkat weavings. Haida art stands out for using a unique type of black slate stone called argillite, only found in the Queen Charlotte Islands. Colors are generally limited to red, black, and sometimes yellow accents. After European contact, Haida art changed and developed with the addition of new materials and applications. Paper, canvas, glass, and precious stones and metals have since been used in Northwest coastal art. Modern Haida art has strayed from the traditional pre-contact style to more gallery-oriented forms like paintings, prints, and sculptures. Without a written language, art was one of the primary forms of communicating religion for the Haida people. It manifests nearly all the dimensions of religion, including ritual, material, mythic, and doctrinal. Imagery was important to communicating the cosmology of the Haida, as it played a role in nearly every aspect of their lives. Ceremonially and ritually, art is used to connect with the gods and their creators, as well as the lessons they teach through legends. This is especially important to the potlatch, a yearly feast and gift-giving ceremony that serves as the main economic system for Northwest coastal tribes.
Today is gonna be the day that they're gonna throw it back to you. By now you should have somehow realized what you gotta do. I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. Backbeat, the word is on the street that the fire in your eyes